Men have fought over the Riverlands since the Dawn Age, so that's to be expected of things that rest below the neck. Doesn't help that the Riverlands are between everything and everything else. The Westerland's gold, the Reach's grain, the Vale's rock, and the North's snow? House Mud once ruled as the kings of the rivers and hills, but after 1,000 years their line was exhausted and fell to the Storm Kings, who fell to the Ironborn. I suppose after years of drowning at sea, our rivers look pretty attractive to that race of pirates and rapers. Never mind that their monstrous castle, Harrenhal, was too large to staff and garrison. It turned out the Ironborn wouldn't be there long enough to bother. Aegon Targaryen landed to our south, and, as had many before him, liked the look of the Riverlands. My ancestor Edmund Tully led the desertion of Riverlords to his cause, and was rewarded by getting to watch King Harren burn in his own tower. Unfortunately, that's not all Edmund got. House Tully was named the Lords Paramount of the Trident, which means we had to keep in line all those lords who hadn't governed themselves for thousands of years. We were now responsible for aiding the Mallisters at Seaguard against the pouting Ironborn whenever they got cheeky. For settling Harrenhal on families stupid enough to think its curse would skip them after devouring all previous families. For keeping the Blackwoods and Brackens from wiping each other out, and giving us 2 more castles to deal with. For keeping the Freys in their place and out of others' pockets. For marrying off our sons and daughters wisely enough so we didn't follow House Mud into, well, the mud. Yet under the Targaryens, the Riverlands knew a peace we hadn't had for centuries, if ever. But like all good things, sooner or later it all goes to shit. And our shit had a name. Aerys Targaryen. Westeros has had its share of Mad Kings, but usually they had the sense not to bully more than one powerful house at a time. Aerys soon blundered into a triple alliance. The North, Stormlands, and Vale rose against him. But of course, where do you think most of the blood was spilled? My brother Hoster guaranteed the answer to that with the marriage of my niece to Eddard Stark, the Warden of the North. At least Hoster didn't send her to Robert. So, the Riverlands joined the war against the Mad King, and it was on one of our rivers that Prince Rhaegar died, sealing the fate of his dynasty. Robert was a great soldier and a horrible king. Drinking and whoring are their own brand of madness when you sit on a throne that everybody wants. He died, and another war started. Again the armies marched. Again the Riverlands burned. If Westeros isn't careful, pretty soon our people will grow some sense and abandon this place for a safer realm, like the Dothraki Sea. I joke, of course. The Riverlands are our home, and God's help us, we love it. Still, as they say, the king eats and the hand takes the shit. The same is true of the Riverlands. The 7 kingdoms piss, and the Riverlands change clothes. Other houses chose dragons, krakens, and lions for their sigils. We Tullys took the trout, that most terrifying of fish, especially when it leaps out of the water. I suppose you don't have many options when you live in the Riverlands. Could have been worse. We could have been minnows or wheat. After all, we make a lot of it. Though a land doesn't get as fertile as ours just by water. The old River Kings, Storm Kings, and the Kings of the Rock spilled blood here for thousands of years, squabbling like children over a new toy, until the Ironborn came and spanked them with their axes. Under Harren the Black, their kingdom stretched all the way to the God's Eye, where they built the largest castle Westeros had ever seen. Maesters teach that Harren was a fool, but he had some sense. If you're going to enslave and torture an entire people, you best have thick walls to hide behind. But the very day the last stone was laid in Harrenhal, Aegon Targaryen landed in Westeros. As soon as he saw Aegon's host on the horizon, my ancestor Edmund led the mass desertion of Riverlords to Aegon's side. I doubt Harren even noticed. The problem with huge castles is they blind you to what's outside, both by their size and the arrogance they inspire. Not that the Ironborn ever lacked for that. They take pride in their ignorance of every trapping of civilization. Though any baker could have told them that fire turns stone walls into an oven. And so Harren the Black finally lived up to his name, and the Riverlords swept the Ironborn back to the sea. In return for Edmund's service, House Tully was made Aegon's new Lord Paramount of the Trident, and all the other lords had to swear us fealty. But old habits die hard. The Riverlands are, and always have been, the middle child of Westeros, caught up in every fart from one lord at another. My ancestors knew that for the Tullys to survive, alliances must be made. Our trout has swum up so many rivers over the centuries and leapt onto so many plates that it's a wonder half the realm's sigils don't have fins by now. Thus, every Tully child is taught family, duty, honor. The Tully words, and pains in the Tully arse. When I returned from the War of the Ninepenny Kings, people called me Sir Brendan. But my older brother Hoster called me Engaged. A great match with a very rich house, to be sure. But I just fought and killed a great deal of men and had no desire to be told when and whom to marry. I broke ties with him, earning the name Blackfish along with my personal sigil, a much more intimidating black trout. I was too stubborn at the time to realize that while other houses fight with swords, House Tully fights with marriages. Then my niece Catelyn's betrothal to Brandon Stark drew us into the war against the Mad King, while my other niece Lysa's betrothal to Jon Arryn cemented the rebellion. If I'd have obeyed my older brother earlier, we'd have had the largest navy in Westeros with us then as well, and our victory would have been swift. Of course, I never mentioned this fact to my brother. He'd have taken it as an apology. My brother is dead now, and my nephew Edmure rules in Riverrun, God's help us. A trout that can't tell the worm from the hook. But he is a Tully, and he is unmarried, and there is a war. We all know how this story ends. Maybe she'll be beautiful. Maybe she'll be rich. As long as she brings swords and men to House Tully, she could look like the fish we hang all over Riverrun. He'll honor his duty to family and swallow it. One blackfish per family can be overlooked. Two, and we'd have to change all those pretty banners.